If I say the name The Monkees, what do you think of? How many of you remember the fate? Now I'm a believer. All of you.
In the mid-60s, aspiring filmmakers Bob Rafelson and Bert Schneider decided to create an easily marketable TV show that would give them a foot in the door in the industry to make experimental counterculture films. They decided to do so by creating a family show that was easy to sell due to its relation to popular trends, that would still have an experimental edge to get them noticed by all the right people in the industry. They combined the madcap musical antics of the Beatles films Help and Hard Day's Night with the humour of the Marx Brothers. The result was The Monkees, a family show that ran for 2 seasons from 1966 to 1968 on NBC. The show followed a rock and roll band who were always down on their luck, who ended up going on wacky adventures to pay the rent, save a pretty girl from an authority figure, or just help those around them. Whilst there were obviously episodes that centred around them being a band, where they were competing in band competitions or trying to get gigs, most of the plots were just about 4 best friends getting into goofy situations. They consisted of Peter, the dim-witted but kind-hearted one, played by Peter Tork, Mickey, the zany goofball played by Mickey Dolenz, Mike, the paternal leader played by Michael Nesmith, and Davy, the baby-faced chick magnet played by Davy Jones. Now that scene in SpongeBob makes way more sense. The characters ended up having more and more elements of the actors behind them added to the show, such as Mickey's interest in science and engineering or Davy's Britishness. There would almost always be a musical sequence or romp that would show the characters running around getting up to silly antics, often being chased by the bad guys, much like the musical sequences in Help. Some episodes would also make up the runtime with an additional music video style sequence and or short interviews with the Monkees where the viewers could see them being themselves, which sometimes were the highlights of the show.
Oh, look at that garage door.
The universe is permeated with the odor of turpentine.
A lot of people and journalists don't know how to spell demonstration, so they use the word riot because it only has 4 letters.
You are not. I'm uglier than you.
Yeah, no, I'm the ugliest.
I'm the ugliest. It's me, it's me, it's me. All right, I lose.
In fact, when the original pilot failed, they made up for the material they trimmed out with Davy and Mike's screen tests. Their own personal charisma, along with Mike's crazy audition antics, were what helped sell the show. The easiest way to describe the style of the show is comparing it to a live-action cartoon, with over-the-top antics accompanied by goofy sound effects and sped-up footage, and zany over-the-top villains played by character actors. In contrast, most of the love interests are very forgettable and played straight, but there are a few exceptions, most notably being TV's Catwoman Julie Newmar in the episode The Monkees Get Out More Dirt, in which she plays a character who is as cartoonishly sexy as Betty Boop. If you are a fan of the Beatles, then there is obviously some crossover appeal if you're a big fan of their first 2 films directed by Richard Lester. Rafelson and Schneider booked a screening room at the studio and showed these films to the writers for inspiration. Whilst the fantasy-adventure tone of Help is obviously closer to the types of stories we see the Monkees in, the characterisation also seemingly influenced the Monkees, with 4 ordinary lads who joyfully disrupt uptight establishment around them. The Monkees had the added benefit of playing underdogs, always looking for work and on the edge of being evicted by the evil Mr. Babbitt, although they'd probably be able to pay the rent if they just sold their giant custom convertible. Despite their anti-authority antics making them popular with younger audiences, they were seen as the palatable, non-threatening version of the long-haired counterculture movement to older generations, allowing them to have a broad appeal. The other films they showed the writers were those of the Marx Brothers, to show them the kind of comedic style they were looking for. There are several nods to them in the show, as well as an episode that's based on the plot of Room Service. I've also heard the Monkees compared to British comedy show The Goodies, which makes a lot of sense. The Monkees was rerun in the UK throughout the 70s, so it would have been easy to make comparisons between the wild and wacky humour. Besides, The Monkees was a kids show that unexpectedly gained a following amongst adults, whilst The Goonies was a show for adults that became surprisingly popular with kids, especially considering how inappropriate some of the humour was on that show for younger viewers. Both of these shows have also been cited as inspiration for The Mighty Boosh, and Noel Fielding was very clearly wearing a replica of Mike's Naked Persimmon outfit here. As for the music, it started out as bubblegum pop, but good bubblegum pop. It's made to be broadly appealing, especially for a younger demographic. Most of these songs were written by songwriters found by producer Don Kirshner, including Neil Diamond and Boyce and Hart, who wrote most of the songs on the first album. However, as you would expect for the first attempt at a manufactured band, the producers of the show made one major mistake: casting people who were talented. One of the major misconceptions about the show was that they threw together any 4 guys and made them into a fake band. Both Davey and Mickey had started out as child actors and were very successful, with Mickey already headlining a TV show at 10 years old with Circus Boy, and Davey getting a Tony Award nomination when he originated the role of the Artful Dodger in Oliver on Broadway. The fact that both of them had just embarked on musical careers was why both of them were invited to audition, whilst Peter was recommended to the producers by Stephen Stills as a fellow musician with a similar look. Mike was actually the only one to answer the newspaper ad they sent out for casting, but he was already working as a recording artist and professional songwriter. Despite being willing and able, the Monkees were prevented from actually playing their own instruments on these first 2 albums. When word got out, people jumped to the conclusion that they therefore couldn't play instruments in the first place, and therefore felt betrayed, especially considering that many people were introduced to their music via the radio and didn't really understand that they were originally intended as a fictional band.
Ew, you like the Monkees? You know they don't write their own songs. They do so. They don't even play their own instruments. No! That's not even Michael Nesmith's real hat.
Many in the press tore them apart, which must have been frustrating considering the Monkees themselves were the whistleblowers.
We were backstage, and it's like 2 minutes before we're supposed to go on. And this guy walks up, he's got a reporter, like that, and he goes, I'm standing with my guitar over my back. And he walks up and he says, is it true that you don't play your own instruments? I said, wait a minute, I'm fixing to walk out there in front of 15,000 people, man. If I don't play my own instruments, I'm in a lot of trouble.
After Don Kay got himself fired by releasing the single without the label's permission, and not Mike punching a hole in the wall of the Beverly Hills Hotel, but that's a story for another day. The Monkees released work they had primarily written themselves and played all of their own instruments on their next album, Headquarters. This meant that their style is now far more personal. You know how The Doors was made up of 4 members of different musical disciplines, and they came together to create a melting pot of one single musical identity? Okay, well, that didn't really happen to the Monkees. It's more like the Colombian dish plata con todo. There's a lot of stuff there. You can either try individual things or mix different things together. That's what these albums sound like. There's a lot of influences that sometimes come together in one song, and others that feel like a member is going in their own direction. This music was less broadly appealing than their previous work, leading to a comparative decline in sales, but the album still sold well. Alongside the shift in music, there was also a shift in the second season of the show. Although the controversy turned away a lot of the counterculture crowd, a lot of people in the industry became fans of the show, most notably the Beatles, who held a party in their honour when they came to London.
If the Monkees weren't around, there'd be no one to watch on TV, and I want to watch TV, and I want to see a nice programme, and their programme is better than most things on TV, I like the show, fellas. Dig what you're doing.
This is reflected by a few of the more adult jokes in the second season.
Not now, this is a family show.
While season 1 definitely broke the fourth wall quite a few times, most notably in Dance Monkeys Dance, when Mickey walks off set to ask the writers for advice, but it happened more in season 2, often reflecting the discontent the Monkees themselves had with the show, culminating in the scene where they walk off set in The Monkees in Paris.
You see one monkey episode, you see all the monkey episodes, man.
The Monkees also got more creative control over the show. 3 of them invited special guests onto the show. Both Peter and Mickey got the chance to write and direct the episodes The Monkees Mind Their Manner and Meja Kojo respectively, with Meja Kojo being the most wacky and was aimed at an older audience. It centred around a leafy alien plant that produced a smoke that made people giggle and relax.
I don't want to fight anymore. I just want to lay down in the grass and be cool.
Read into that what you will. After the show was cancelled, Bob Rafelson and Bert Schneider finally got to make an experimental counterculture film with Head, a film in which the Monkees expressed their dissatisfaction with the manufactured image and lack of creative control in a nightmarish meta-trip that imploded their family-friendly image with real Vietnam War footage, drug jokes, and snogging.
The most fun was the character assassination. We had a lot of fun at the Monkees' expense.
What can be called a plot is about the Monkees escaping their own TV show, breaking through layer after layer of reality. But it's made up of a lot of scenes that may seem completely random without context. Although it was mostly ignored upon release, with the intended counterculture audience already turning their nose up at the Monkees, and their fanbase being too young to see a film with real footage of a guy getting shot in the head, the film gained a cult following. It's one of my favourite movies, but that's a story for another day. Despite tearing into their image, the film managed to be entertaining in its weirdness, and didn't feel like it was whacking us over the head with a single theme. 33 1/3 revolutions per monkey is a lot. I'm going to post a fab video I found that goes in depth into this in the cards up here, so I'll try to be brief. 2 aliens plan on conquering the world by manufacturing a rock and roll band to brainwash the masses. Said band is of course the Monkees. Whilst I'll admit that both the plots and the idea to take more of a variety show direction are interesting on paper, the execution is simultaneously weird and dull. I confess that I couldn't get through it until I watched it with the Mickey Dolenz commentary, and even he sounded bored. Whilst there are individual music sequences that worked, the Monkees themselves are performing the whole time and are playing mindless drones for about half of it, effectively depriving the audience of the characters they had grown to love. This was sadly the last time the 4 of them would perform together for nearly 3 decades. After the special, Peter left due to exhaustion, cancelling any plans for future specials. Whilst the Monkees would still make 2 albums and appearances on other shows and ads as a 3-piece band, Mike would then leave. After 1 more album as a duo, the Monkees were no more. Except they weren't. In 1986, for the 20th anniversary, MTV, a channel Mike helped create, but that's a story for another day, aired a Monkee marathon. Its music video style sequences were considered ahead of their time, and the show was a surprise hit for a whole new generation. Whilst the Monkees did get reruns in several countries in the 70s, even becoming a surprise hit with the punk generation, the MTV reruns effectively revived Monkee mania in the United States, leading to reunion tours of Peter, Davey and later Mickey, followed by the album Pool It. There was a failed attempt to cash in on the revived interest with a TV show called The New Monkees, starring an all-new Gen X band, but that's a story for another day. Mike wouldn't return to the band until their 30th anniversary in 1996 with the album Just Us, although he made a few live appearances with them. The anniversary was also accompanied by a TV special, written and directed by Mike, that acted as a loving farewell for the show, poking fun at the use of stock footage and canned laughter.
The house is on fire! People are starving! There is no fruit!
The plot was as meta as the humour, as the Monkees had been stuck in their TV show unwatched for 30 years, having exhausted every plotline in the book to the extent they are no longer interested in having one. So basically it's The Simpsons. Although the special doesn't stand up that well against the series, there's a lot of weird moments to enjoy in it. At the end, Mickey uses the last of the budget and the series ends, giving the show the send-off it deserved. The Monkees finally ended, not with a cynical fizzle, but with a bang, with an affectionate farewell rather than a bitter one. Although they never toured again as a quartet after that, some variation of the Monkees continued to tour intermittently over the next 20 years.
Well, it's impossible to get out of the pop world when you're in it, because you take it along with you. And 40 years from now, the people that I'm playing to now, I'll be playing to then. I mean, they'll still be, if I'm popular, they'll still be my fans.
In 2016, they released their first album in 20 years, Good Times. Although this was 4 years after Davey's death, they used an unreleased 60s recording, Love to Love. The album was successful enough for them to make a Christmas album, Christmas Party, in 2018, a few months before Peter's death in February of the following year. Mike toured with Mickey until his death in 2021, making Mickey Dolenz the final Monkee.
We'll tour until one of us drops, then the other will go on as the monkey. Hey, it's the monkey. And people say, I monkey around.
Obviously, I have no way of guaranteeing that this show is for you. But if it is, hopefully this video is enough to recommend that you check it out. It's really hard to describe a show that sounds like a soulless cash grab on paper that ended up as so much more in execution. Director Jim Frawley referred to it as lightning in a bottle. The right people just happened to come together to make something really special. As you can probably tell, I brushed over a lot of stuff, like Jack Nicholson, Jimi Hendrix, and that time John Lennon invited Mike to stay in his house even though they'd never met before. But I'll put links in the cards and in the description so that you can watch more in-depth videos about certain areas of their history. In addition, I'll post links to some of the documentaries made over the years that spend more time covering the history of the band. I also skipped over their personal lives because I don't want to get demonetised. My regular review and video essay content will resume next Friday. I'll probably alternate it with Monkee videos for now. My next Alice Cooper video is coming soon. I've got a couple of videos on Harry Nilsson coming soon. I've just finished 2 massive Colombian series that I'm really desperate to introduce you to. So be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be the first to find out when I post them. Have you seen the Monkees? Are you familiar with their music? Have you avoided them entirely because of their reputation? Did you watch them as a kid? Or were you weird like me and start watching them as a young adult? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. I post new reviews and video essays nearly every Friday, so consider subscribing if you like that sort of thing. If you want me to make more content like this, you can let me know by liking the video. If you feel like buying me a coffee, you can tip me on Ko-fi. You can also follow me on Twitter at Enchanted Essays. If you want to watch me on my quest to review every Monkees episode, you can check out my playlist here. See you soon!
Julie Andrews.